All right, we're in week 7, and we're discussing philosophy. This is a good time to point out. There was a method to my madness in how I organized discussions over the first 7 weeks, first 6 weeks. Um, the first one being, I asked you simply, why do you want to be a teacher? I asked second week what you thought your background, your social and economic status, and ethnicity would bring to the classroom. I asked how you thought schools should be funded, if they should be allowed to bring in external companies like Pepsi or other companies to advertise in the schools. We talked about what we thought were the roles of the schools. What is our social context? We discussed poverty. We discussed Stephen Brill's book. All these things were done on purpose for you to start hashing these all out. And I have to say, reading your discussion posts, I was really impressed with the way you tore things apart as a group. It's not that I expected less of you, but it's really exciting to see when discussion posts take off and under their own, they tend to evolve and into something that's really cool, which is definitely one of the reasons why we do discussion posts. So in discussion, to comment on your posts on the poverty aspect and Stephen Brill's book, I think um, there were a lot of great ideas out there, and part of it was interesting how a lot of you focused on things that schools do that are actually focused on helping children coming from lesser backgrounds. Things like school lunch programs. Um, my goodness, even showering after gym class was something that was put in a time period when we started first learning about hygiene and understanding that we should probably take as a people we should probably take showers or baths more than once a week. Um, those things are all reflected in the schools. Those types of attempts to make changes on children's lives, and they are good. Um, but the question still lingers there, that what can we do in the big picture to prevent poverty, to act as an equalizer. And I think that's part of the problem with the discourse today on school reform. It's trying to make, it's not talking about individual programs like school lunch programs to aid in poverty, or setting up schools as community centers where people can go and work on computers who don't have their own computers, things like that. It's more of a philosophical change where schools can equalize the playing field, and I do believe that they can to some extent. But it is only one part of a very complex formula. I like the idea. I like how a lot of you tore apart whether we are discussing eliminating poverty or the effects of poverty. And I think that's a very interesting distinction to make. Schools can alleviate some of the effects. And as a history teacher, one of the things I used to always teach about the Great Depression. What was interesting about the Great Depression is this rise of a stigma of poverty. People have been poor as long as there have been people. But something that happens during the Great Depression in the United States, where we really start seeing the stigma of poverty, the idea of being embarrassed about being poor. And I think it's because of the changes in culture. You had people during the Depression who put off having children, put off getting married. There's a very sad story in the Great Depression literature where a teacher asks a student why she isn't eating lunch today, and the student says, "It's my sister's turn to eat lunch. And this is her day." So I don't know if I'm pretty sure we're not there yet with the current state of the economy, but this idea that Brill points out and a lot of the school reformers put out, and again, if you haven't seen either The Lottery or the movie Waiting for Superman, you should. You owe it to yourself as somebody's going into that profession to get a sense of what the talk is out there. And again, these are only one sides of the argument, which I think that in itself is kind of interesting, why other points aren't being made. And I think it's because nobody wants to put on that hot seat. You can equate it to why no one spoke up about invading Iraq within a year after 9/11. It's you put yourself on a spot to come out and argue against it, because then it gives you the impression that you think schools are great, and this idea that uh, we must raise the standard of schools. If you come out and say something that you're against that argument, it sounds like you want to lower the standards. And again, it's not that black and white. So, how do all these things phase into what we're looking for in a personal philosophy? Um, well, one of the things to keep in mind is this term reductionism, where we take our own personal philosophy is influenced by reductionism. That is to say that we are the centers of our universe, all individually. Everything we know and experience influences how we do things, how we go about being people. And of course, this is going to affect how we become being teachers. I'm very guilty of this. I have personal experiences as a teacher that influence how I teach. So the important thing here is not to try to keep that from happening. You are who you are. You bring to the table all these things we talked about, the reasons why you want to be a teacher, your ethnic and social economic status backgrounds, what you think the roles of the school should be. It's foolish to ignore those things. They are who you are. They add to what you are going to be as a teacher. The important thing here is to set those things not aside, but kind of look through the lens that we have to remember that that's not the only part of the world. For example, you might be a good lecturer, so you decide maybe that you learned well through lecture, so you tend to teach through lecture a lot. Well, that's not going to be the case for everybody. We have to keep reminding ourselves that our own experiences aren't the only experiences. Knowledge is created through individual interactions between each other and our teachers and our environments. So we have to keep that in mind as we become teachers. So, with all this in mind, how do you develop your own philosophy of teaching? This is going to be important because this is something that principals and superintendents during the hiring process will ask you point blank in an interview, what is your philosophy of education? So there's a practical value to developing this. Second of all, of course, I'm giving you a grade to develop one, which we will do in the next week or two here. Third, I'm arguing that because of all these discussions, you already have a philosophy of education. Now that we've been using these discussion forums as a platform for this, you should be able to go back and look and see a documented list of your beliefs, at least in the interactions you have with your classmates and have had with your classmates, influences this. So, we will talk about this more. I will address this probably in an email to you when we do this, but we have a reflection paper due this week. But we're right around the midterm point, so the philosophy of education is the next major thing we will do. All right? Thank you.